Art-Based Research Practice. It's a book by Patricia Levy in 2009, was published. And it defines art-based research, from now on noted as ABR, as practices are a set of methodological tools, easy for me to say, used by qualitative researchers across the disciplines during all phases of social research, including data collection, analysis, interpretations, and representation. As we talk a little bit more about ABR, there are some things that will come up in the book that will give ideas about new questions to ask, new ways to reach audiences that may not be academic in nature. So in sharing information across and among multicultural areas as well is another topic that will be covered. And it uses a lot of those touchy-feely words that we're very used to in qualitative analysis. Things like describe and explore, discover, process, develop, emerge. The ABR is highly effective in communicating emotional aspects of life, and we'll see this through the 6 genres that we'll talk about from the book. It can be used in identity work, give voice to the marginalized, promote dialogue, can be shared again amongst diverse audiences, can have and accommodate multiple meanings, but has some difficulty when we come to how do we validate those data that we actually collect. And is it trustworthy? And how do we decide how it's going to be analyzed? Some things that are mentioned in the book are aesthetics. We use aesthetic analysis, thinking of what is the value of the work in terms of research? What is its value in terms of pedagogical function? Other things you can think about are interdisciplinary collaboration and reflection. And that's some stuff that we have heard here very recently that we're getting into more and more every day about crossing that divide amongst those disciplines as to how we can make our research more functional where we're working. Some of the benefits of this book in particular. Empirical research examples from noted scholars, so there really is research out there. It's not just touchy-feely, fuzzy. Key terms and definitions are offered in case you're looking at trying any of these methodological techniques. Major methods within which, or within each methodological genre, examples of research questions, in case you're interested, a checklist of considerations, annotated list of journals, websites, and suggested readings, and pedagogical features, discussions, and activities that are available for each chapter. So the 6 genres that Patricia covers in the text are narrative inquiry, poetry, music, performance, dance movement, and visual art. Those particular genres, the way they're set up in this book, move from narrative inquiry to visual art as I read them. And the author states it's because we move from word to image. Now, it's not the only way that this can be presented. It just worked for her in the book like this. However, each topic can be taken separately. You do not have to read the book in the order it's presented. However, it does kind of give you a way to build upon the previous and understand that move that she's trying to explain if you do read it from front to end. Something that caught my eye in the book, it said, we prefer our knowledge solid and our data hard. So this is very difficult for anybody who doesn't like hard data, that it's a little too touchy-feely. But she tries to overcome that in this first section. Under narrative inquiry, it attempts to collaboratively access participants' life experiences and engage in a process of storytelling and restorying in order to reveal multidimensional meanings and present an authentic and compelling rendering of the data. The author starts here because it most closely resembles what we do as researchers when we talk about narrative inquiry, what we're doing as we're interviewing our participants in our study. And it just digs in a little bit more deeply and starts making connections to what the author's trying to share in the book. So it gives us a place to start from that doesn't seem too far out from where we are. Narrative inquiry is reflective, it's participatory, there's an aesthetic process to it, and it includes things like use of fiction and ghostwriting, and those pieces of information are actually in the chapter. How could it be used? Imagine if you're dealing with participants that have been through some instance of sexual harassment, or some instance of trying to share gender as an issue in the workplace, or as a challenge that some people have come across. Maybe people studying violence on college campuses, because a lot of this is helpful in research that involves traumatic events. Moving on, narrative inquiry themes. The relationship of the researched and the researcher. We've talked quite a bit about how our opinion, how our focus and viewpoint can affect not only what we see, but how we see it. The move from numbers to words as data. Emergence of new epistemologies, what is knowledge? And then the shift from general to specific. So if you're looking at depth in qualitative study versus the breadth, this is an opportunity to dig a little deeper in that information. Absolutely.
One of the things that struck me when reading about the narrative inquiry is that it has to do a lot with kind of what we're doing with documents. And if somebody has kept a journal, we could use that as a document or an artifact. And so this all plays together. So it's anything in the written word is the narrative inquiry.
Great. So we move to poetry. Poems use words, rhythm, and space to create sensory scenes where meaning emerges from a careful construction of both language and silences. Here is a very important topic about the break, that silence, that it can really mean something. Poetry is a form that brings in that emotional component, that helps the meaning making and can actually expose those multiple meanings of things that you're looking for. And we were talking about transcribing. Some of you that actually have had a chance to do your interviews, and transcribing, you have the opportunity to put in whether the person slowed down their speech, or they took a big sigh, or there's a break in their response, or something that elicits that meaning in that space, even when things aren't being said. So this kind of helps move that along. It's a representational form. It really is used in identity research primarily. It answers the question, what does it mean to be who I am? And if you're looking at that, that's that component that gives that autobiographical feel to what you're doing as a researcher and what your participants are experiencing. It can be used to represent experiences of those who are marginalized or disenfranchised. It could be used for maybe international student studies or student culture groups or self-realization, medical issues, those kinds of things. So that's probably where you might see it in those particular instances. The third one that is under the umbrella is music. I'll try not to dwell on this because I know more about this than anything else. So what I'll just say in general is it's considered to be the art of arranging sounds into continuous and unified composition with dimensions that typically include rhythm and melody. And the best way for me to get that across, it's not just about what you hear on the radio or what you play on an instrument. Think about daily life. Think about the flow of traffic. Think about when you don't feel right, when things don't seem to be going well, or it seems to have sped by or slowed down everything has a set of rhythms, of harmonies, of disharmony, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the research components. Music is created in cultural and historical context. So if you've actually had a chance through the time, even with Dr. Wanger's class, moving forward from the 1960s music, or even before that, to the future, you've got a lot of information about what's going on around you, what's going on politically, what's going on emotionally. There are a lot of things that can be represented. You find in poetry, you find in others as well. Categories, essentially what you're looking for here is perhaps we can evaluate experiences, such as racially integrated research, or another thing about traumatic events, like the fallout of Katrina, what they did to rebuild the jazz quarter, and how the people that were involved with it did a lot of that through music and through interviews. So there's a lot of things that go into this component. And then technology. For those of you that are studying to increase the use of technology in your research, there's another opportunity here, not only in synthesizing the sound, but being able to dissect and analyze music as it stands. So when we talk about the dimensions of music, very basically, we're looking at form, which organizes the music, rhythm, which is that temporal time, the pace at which it happens, the dynamics, the loudness, the softness, and mind you, again, just like anything else, it's based on the relationship between the loud and the soft. What is considered loud? Well, it depends on how soft the soft part is. It's not really so much how many decibels is it. So it's very comparative. Timbre, the musical color or inflection when you say something sounds rich. Polyphony or harmony, the simultaneous lines of sound, how they sound together. And then melody, think of it as the plot line, the story, the thing that comes across while everything else is moving underneath it, pace of life. Why does it make a difference to have any of these dimensions included? Well, think about your transcription. Think about what we talked about a little bit earlier. If I were to actually identify these 7 components in my transcription, would I be able to? What's the tone of the speaker's voice at the time they say it? Do they say it more softly and under their voice than they did, or was it a big loud acclamation? Does it tell me what the person wanted to get across or tried to get across, and how quickly can I capture that information? So that really has a lot to do then with the interview component, with the transcription component, later on with analysis. And again, this is a very broad overview of that information. So I'm going to turn it over to Eddie to talk about 4 through 6.
Before I go on, one of my interviews was the way she spoke was very melodic. She had very much ups and very much downs and very much quiet and loud. And I was thinking about when I read about using music, going beyond what I think of as music, and thinking about the way she talked and the way it was in the interview. And I hadn't even considered that. I also thought, depending on what you're studying, you could find out, well, what is on your iPod, to that level, and be able to see if there were some themes that are found in the music that somebody listens to. What kind of music do you listen to when you're stressed out? What kind of, what music, gives some specific things like that, and be able to do an analysis within those as well. The next area was performance studies. And of course, performance, we think of theater. And performance studies, are, according to Ms. Levy, are conscious raising. They provide empowerment, emancipation, political agendas, discovery, exploration, education. Think about, and this would include speeches. It could include performances. You can use it in data collection and analysis. You could have your study participants, if maybe a focus group is actually a form of performance study, or you could ask them to play out a scene, or do a little bit of improv. They may be reticent, kind of depends, but that kind of thing is really what we're looking at when we talk about performance studies. You can give a situation where you're going to be if you were studying people who were domestically abused, for example, then you could role play possibly. How would you react? How could you react instead of, and that kind of thing, and have them perform it. And that could be part of the performance study and the data collection. It's the what if. You can create a performance space, again I said improvisation, and you could also have your study participants watch something, watch a performance, and then give their reactions as an audience, and that could also be included in your data. Performance studies also as a, this was fun. You can also use this as a way to present your findings. You could write a thing. I just can't imagine doing this for your dissertation, but but thinking about a lot of ways that we present our findings are at conferences, and those are performances. I saw Pat present at OACC last week, and
interpretive dance on
she gave quite the performance.
Did you get that on video? Because I almost
And there's also Jason's performance.
Ethnodrama is a big word that she used in there, and it's writing up research findings in a dramatic or script form that may or may not be performed. So you can, if you had a section that you could, from your data, that you could create a small script, a small section of script to help evoke the emotions that the participants were feeling or that your data shows, in a different manner. Performance mapping is also another way to do this. It's a collage style performance that occurs through performed dialogue. So again, you could do a dialogue, you could do a monologue, you could, any of those things are valid, although not necessarily standard practices for showing your performance data. Oh man, I forgot to turn on the internet. Okay. Okay, this box is a video, so you missed out. Dance and movement. The body.
That was past performance.
Yes, it was. You missed that.
You should have the internet.
Well, I'm not going to go and
It's
try to
not
fix
working.
it at this point. Well, we have other things. The body is a tool through which meaning is created. Dance and movement is has consciousness-raising potential. In many, it can celebrate differences and transcend social and economic barriers, and it can be used as a representational vehicle. In anthropology, dance has been used as a form of cultural information. So we can study cultures, we can study the dance of cultures as part of their culture. And it really has begun being used, recently been used as a methodological device. For example, again, you can make comparisons across different cultures. You could make contrasts between analyses, and you could ask participants to create movement as part of your data collection and record them as part of this. And I'm getting some rolled eyes, and I kind of felt the same way about this. I didn't think it. But you can also collect data about interpretations by study participants. So again, like the performance studies, they could watch a dance performance and see what emotions it evokes, what they thought of that, and you could have interview questions that relating to the performance that they watched. Another area that has to do with dance is movement and movement analysis. And this is, during an interview, your participant is not static. They move around, they shift, they lean forward, or maybe if they have a point to make, they lean back if they got comfortable. Again, one of my interviews was the one who was very musical, was also very movie. She moved a lot. She was moving. And then finally, you could use dance and movement as a representational style. I'm not doing an interpretive dance for my dissertation committee. I can't imagine. But it is seldom used that way. The author suggests that if you are going to use it as a representational vehicle, that first you create the choreography, and then you have a pilot performance with your colleagues so they can see it, and or experts to get feedback regarding their impressions, interpretations to themes, to make sure that the result was what you intended. So, if I can't think of a specific example right now, but if your intention was to show sorrow and grief and that kind of thing through a dance, not necessarily yourself dancing, then you could do that, and that would be a valid, according to the author, a valid way to represent your analysis. The third, or the sixth genre, was visual arts. And within visual arts, we have three genres: subject-produced images, research-produced images, and pre-existing images. So subject-produced images would be like what Dr. Carney does with the drawings, and having your participants create drawings about whatever experiences that you're wanting data on. We could also have research-produced images where, as part of your data, as part of your analysis and your writing, that you could have a production of your own based on your analysis. And then pre-existing images, if you were studying cultures, for example, if I were studying about the Spanish Civil War, Guernica by Pablo Picasso would have to be one of those areas that I would want to look, one of those pre-existing images that I would look at, because this shows the horrors of war and of a city being bombed out. And if I could do an analysis between that and for example, images that were painted about the 9/11 bombing, and you could do a cultural analysis that way. Yeah, it's the bombing of the city of Guernica during the Spanish Civil War, at the beginning of the Spanish Civil War, and you see the flames on the people.
I think that looked like a dinosaurs.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see here.
Yeah, I'm not good.
Where all the pieces, basically body parts. There's body parts everywhere. There's
Now I
it's
see
a
it.
mishmash of
It's
different
really
things.
fractured.
It is very fractured. Your analysis, you can observe the data as a whole. You can make an inventory or log of images using categories that reflect or reflect. Oh, she fixed it. On mine it says reflect. So thank you, Dawn. And assist research goals. You could engage in structured analysis process, or you could search for meaning and draw conclusions based on the entire visual record. They also talked about having your subjects take photographs. It's another way to do use visual arts. The goal should not be to decode or translate visual data, but rather to build a bridge between the visual and the verbal. So it's building on what was said in interviews or focus groups, and so it just increases your data. That that whole triangulation thing we've been talking about.
So in that vein, what we're going to do is take a moment for a small activity, and we have 3 different collages for you to look at. So if you would do me a favor and get into 3 groups, 2 of 3 and 1 of 2, I think is probably how it'll work.
Groupies.
And what we're going to do with these in particular
You and I can be in the group.
is when you look at some of this information, we think it really may not apply to what we're doing in our research for education. However, what I'd like you to attempt to do is look at these collages, determine potentially what type of research questions you would have asked to get this type of output, and what interview questions you would structure to ask them what this was about. So it's kind of like a working, oh here, I'm sorry. There you go. Pass right in front of your camera.
Okay, well, it's about one, it's about the long one. So the kind of questions that would have been asked to get
That this would
this
bring
would
in.
run, okay,
Yeah.
and then what we would ask,
To clarify.
To clarify?
Yeah, follow-ups. What would you do for a follow-up?
I'm sorry? Oh, do we both get the same one?